Hi everyone. For a filthy lot entertainment, welcome to Drawn and Cornered. It's the show that corners today's best comic book artists as they answer deep dive questions while they draw art suggested by you, the fans. After the show, you can bid on the art and all the proceeds will go to our guest's charity of choice. So make sure you watch through to the end to see the final product. Today in the drawing chair is Troy Little. Troy is an incredible artist that has worked on various books that range from family-friendly fare to adult-oriented content. Books like The Powerpuff Girls and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, both from IDW, Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons for Oni Press, and his self-published Angora Napkin Saga. Troy, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time coming. Can you tell us what you're going to be drawing today and what charity this is going to benefit?
So this is for an Indigenous charity, Canadian, I guess, out in Vancouver, perhaps. Anyway, sorry, talking and doing things at the same time is not my forte, so I'm going to work with me on this one. Getting my pen and ink here set up. Do you want to know what I'm drawing today? Do you want to see it, or do you want to just hear what's going to happen?
Well, first of all, let us know what it is that you're going to draw.
All right, I'm going to draw a character I've never drawn before that I've always wanted to draw. So for me, this is like exciting. Character I really enjoy. Sam Keith's the Maxx.
Oh, that, yeah. You know what? I wouldn't have been able to guess that in a million years.
Oh, no?
No.
Really?
That's great. Love that. I can't wait
because I love the Maxx. The Sam Keith stuff is so cool. And the Maxx was one of those comic books that when I discovered it, I'm like, holy smokes. Yeah. You can make a comic like this cartoony, this cerebral, this bizarre, all in one go. And it was a huge inspiration of kind of like breaking out of the format of just traditional comics.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think when I read it, obviously it came out in that early spate of image books. It was one, it was the most different out of all of them. And two, as a younger reader, I think maybe 12 when that book came out. I loved it for the art, but I didn't understand it. And it took me years. Sure. But I collected every issue in hopes of being able to piece it all together in my young mind, and I did eventually.
I haven't read it in years. I've got it all put in my long boxes, and they got buried in one of our moves. So I need to go in and dig them out, like the Ark of the Covenant, and give it a revisit because I loved it so much. Yeah.
I wanted to get started as well by asking you. You know that you've been nominated for Eisner, Harvey, Ringo Awards, and generally there isn't a lot of crossover between those. Like the Eisner tends to be a bit more mainstream, while Harvey's veer a little bit more toward indie. How did it feel to get those nominations, and how much did it mean to you?
It was incredibly weird, incredibly strange, something I never expected, especially for what I was nominated for with the Eisners, which is my personal work, a project I've been working on for a lot of years called Angora Napkin. Actually running a Kickstarter for that right now. And my first two Eisner nominations were Angora Napkin, and they're comedy. So like the Oscars, you don't assume that most things that are comedic are actually going to get nominated for anything. So the fact that my weird little indie girl band comic, comedy thing was nominated for an Eisner kind of like blew my mind. And I knew I wasn't going to win. I was up against Beasts of Burdens. And then for my first book and the second one, I was up in the same category as Chris Ware. So there was no illusions that I'm going to San Diego to lose. And that whole is an honor to be nominated kind of thing is going to be real heavy in my vocabulary.
When you get nominated for an Eisner and having to go to San Diego, do they invite you and bring you over, or do you have to pay for your own way to get there?
That IDW is very good to me in the early days for sure. They took on my very first book, Chiaroscuro, and then from there they started publishing my other books, Angora Napkin, and when I finally asked them hey, do you have any licensed work I can do and actually get paid? They hooked me up with the Powerpuff Girls and stuff. So they were really good to me, and they kind of helped me out a little bit, getting me to San Diego, getting me a hotel to stay at and somewhere. So it was very cool. What's that?
I mean, San Diego is it's just so overwhelming.
Oh man, yeah. The first time I went was 2001. I think I went up by myself, I went with a friend of mine,
Mhm.
but I was going around the show by myself, and meeting all these people like Eddie Campbell and Dave Cooper and all these guys, and I'm like, holy smokes! I got to
Mhm.
meet Will Eisner, and that blew my mind.
Of
So
course.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
you started your career actually in animation as a layout artist and then a
yep.
key animator, and you worked on shows such as Rupert and the Ripping Friends. But you kind of walked away from that to pursue comics. What persuaded you to make that change?
It's a weird kind of hybrid. Like I've always loved comic books. I always loved cartoons. Like I was a big Looney Tunes fan from like the old 1950s and 60s stuff. Um, so I just thought, yeah, well, I want to go and do animation. So I went to a school in Ontario here in Canada that taught illustration, animation, all that stuff. I took an illustration course for 3 years, thinking I'll go back and
Mhm.
take the animation course when I'm done. I'll just have all this knowledge I can use. But I never went back for animation. I just took the illustration course and was done with it.
Mhm.
A couple of years later, I ended up living in Ottawa and just working at a gas station. And somebody said, "Oh, you like to draw? You must work at one of the animation studios in town." I'm like, there's animation studios in town. So completely unqualified for that, I went and put my like put a portfolio together
Yeah.
and just kind of walked in the door. I'm like, "Hi, give me a job." And two out of three studios like, don't call us, we won't call you. And then the last one's like, oh yeah, we're looking for some, can you draw backgrounds? I'm like, perspective, yeah, I can draw background, sure. Or I can try, I mean, tell you whatever, it gives me a job.
Yeah.
And they started me out working there, and that was on some of the early shows like the Rupert and a lot of these Canadian. Nelvana's our company up in Toronto, and they had a lot
Mhm.
of kids programming, Franklin the Turtle and stuff like this. So I'd end up working on those shows a lot. And over the years, you had some all cool shows like, I got to work on Ren and Stimpy and Ripping Friends a bit,
Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy, happy.
and mostly kid shows though. Like that's stuff you want to have on your resume, saying, "Man, I worked on
Depends
that."
on who you ask.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like I've had a guy in Montreal like found out I worked on Ripping Friends, and he like lost his mind. He's like, "Wow." So he commissioned me on the spot to draw the Ripping Brothers. I haven't drawn these guys since the '90s. Oh my god! So, but I would always. So it was like around 1997. Me and my friend Nick Cross, we went to college together. And we
Mhm.
thought, well, working on all these kids shows kind of sucks. Be better to work on a cool show. So I guess we should make one. Like in complete naive, yeah, let's
Sure.
just make a cartoon. And it was like 1997, and we came up with this idea for Angora Napkin.
Mhm.
So that's the project that I eventually turned into comic books, right? Um, Angora Napkin was meant to be originally an animated series.
You
So
you did a pilot though at one point, right?
we did. We actually got to make an animated pilot for it. So it was a weird way that kind of came about, but it was working on that pilot, or sorry, before the pilot, we were trying to make the show happen with a studio in Ottawa, and it
Mhm.
kind of just fizzled out. It didn't go anywhere. So I asked Nick, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I just take this and make some comic books out of it? And he's like, go ahead. He was off doing some other stuff. He really got into the animation world. And I just kind of like doing comics, and I like these characters. And I want to keep making more stories with them.
Right.
So doing that, and then a couple of years, probably a decade later, uh, Teletoon, which is kind of like our cartoon network up north here, they were looking for some like late night content shows, so they wanted to do the pilot project, and they picked 10 different ideas from across Canada to develop as pilots, and Angora Napkin was one of those. So that's kind of how that got made. Shoestring budget, flash animation, and about 8, 9 of us just all across Canada, like pitching in our spare time, trying to make a pilot. But it turned out pretty good, and we had a lot of great talent on it too. So I'm super super proud of how it turned out.
Now you and your wife Brenda, whom we interviewed previously, run a small press publisher where you publish your own work. And having worked for some of the biggest publishers, what went into deciding to start your own? And what's been the most surprising thing about the whole endeavor?
The surprising and really great thing is you can make money self-publishing. Working with the companies that I've worked with has been really good. But when it comes to the creator-owned projects, they can only, and realistically, I understand they can only invest so much time and effort into supporting small projects and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the books that I've published with IDW, they really like them. But as they said to me, Transformers and G.I. Joe keeps the lights on. So as much as they like my project, they're not going to give it as much backing or importance as you're going to give to someone they're paying a license for. I understand that. That's fine. So problem for me is it takes me years to make a book, and to go say take 3, 4, 5 years to do a graphic novel in my spare time, and then literally make no money, like nothing at all. Hoping that you get enough sales somehow on the back end. It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So having Kickstarter and crowdfunding type places come along and see some other people have some success with that, we thought we'd try that out. And like right out of the gate with Brenda's book, it financed a print run and then some. And that's a non-established character, but a fun little story, and a lot of people just kind of wanting to, just curious to see, what it's about, what is it, and how's it. I know it was just different. We could promote it ourselves and push it how we wanted to, promote it the way we wanted to. And we're like,
right,
we could do all that work for a publisher, or we could do it for ourselves and actually, reap the benefits for a change.
Right. So I guess one of the keys is having that control, right? You're able to
absolutely. Yeah, definitely control is a big part of it. Just seeing that kind of like, nobody's going to care about the project more than we are. So we might as well do it ourselves. And so far so good. We're running we're not even a week into our new Kickstarter and it's already half funded. So fingers crossed, a couple of weeks from now, we're way above and beyond. And that's more than I can say for pretty much all my other creator-owned books that were published by the big guys,
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of other creator-owned books, your book, Chiaroscuro, was met with a lot of praise from critics and creators. It started as a self-published venture, but eventually it got picked up by IDW. It seems that it really jump-started your career and opened doors. What was it like as a young creator, especially to have someone like Dave Sim praise the book?
If you ever see the book around, which it's probably out of print and scarce now, but it's got Cerebus written all over it as far as the Dave Sim style. Like I would just sit there and pour over, because I was like a lot of people, very influenced in like, oh my God, here's a guy who for 27 years made a comic book. And I crunched the numbers, and in the 80s anyways, he did very, very well for himself. So I'm like, it can be done, and all his kind of idea behind it is like, nobody's going to pay you enough money to sue them.
Right.
So, anyway, he has his ideas about various things, which I don't agree with. But one thing he can do is publish a book. And I kind of learned how he did it about 10 or 15 years past the point of that being useful, that information, because the industry changed so much. And I went and dove headfirst into it anyway, and just kind of modeled what I was doing after what he was doing. Talking to Diamond and applying for the Xeric grant, which I got, which is pretty cool. And that really helped because that got me in with Diamond. And so my first black and white comic was carried by Diamond. And eventually,
that's
again,
through it.
Yeah. And what's the most rare thing about my whole career has been a bizarre sense of circumstances, because I did that book just in my spare time, and it's very, very, like I said, Dave Sim influenced on the art side. The out of the blue one day I get an email from Ted Adams at IDW, because he happens to be a fan of Dave's work, saying, oh, I saw that Dave wrote a nice review about your your book. Can I take a look at it? So I sent it to them, and they offered me to publish my book as like a collected hardcover. So I was like, hell yeah, it's amazing. And I'd had another book in the go at the time, one of the Angora Napkin books. I showed that to them, and they're like, yeah, we'll publish that. So great. I got 2 books published by IDW out of nowhere, all because Dave Sim wrote a nice review when he had a blog online, because totally random.
And and looking back on that, what's one piece of advice that you would have given to the Troy Little of 20 years ago?
God, 20 years ago. What would I have said? Get into webcomics, kid. Because that's get in early, because that's anybody who's doing webcomics 20 years ago was in on the ground floor. Right. That was not on my radar. And so I missed a boat on that. By the time webcomics became a thing, I'd missed the boat on that as much as I missed the boat on the black and white 80s boom. So I'm always chasing it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with Chiaroscuro, that's kind of a completely different type of storytelling. It's more free and experimental. Did you find it difficult to switch between how you tackle your other projects to this one? Or are they so separate in your mind that it's not even a consideration?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's a different kind of storytelling for sure. Chiaroscuro is much of a dark and kind of moody Twin Peaks drama type of story about a struggling artist. So I guess that's where I was at the time. And I think I spent 5 years making that book. After 5 years of cross-hatching like a madman, I just wanted to do something with absolutely no cross-hatching in it. And I thought, okay, Chiaroscuro is a book 1. I'll get back to book 2. I just need to take a break. So I took a little break, and I thought I'll just do something fun, quick, cartoony, and why not Angora Napkin? Because that was the thing we kind of already established as an idea, and I didn't really want it to just disappear. So I thought that I'll just do that, and I'm taking like 3 years instead. And by the time the 3 years were up, IDW stuff had happened. I had an Eisner. The cartoon thing was happening. I'm like, holy crap, Angora Napkin has some traction, has some legs on it. I should do another Angora Napkin book instead of going back and doing Chiaroscuro. And so everything kept leading me away from doing a second volume of Chiaroscuro. And it was a little bit like, do I really want to go back to like another 5 years of cross-hatching a book that, didn't really sell very well? So my expectations for that were kind of low. So it kind of just got abandoned, and much like Twin Peaks did for like 25 years. So will there be a Chiaroscuro 2? People ask me that every so often, and I usually say, if you're a millionaire or something, you want to finance it, I can make that story happen.
I guess so. Now, I wanted to talk about your foray into the mainstream stuff. Your first foray, in fact, was a gig on the Powerpuff Girls. I'm always curious about books like that, and if the creators were fans before working on the property. I mean, you did mention that you just asked IDW if you had any stuff that you could work on for money. Was that one of those cases, and were you jazzed about working on this gig?
Yeah. Again, my life's a complete catastrophe of happenstance and blind luck. Because at the time that I contacted IDW about that, I was working on Paw Patrol. You know that cartoon?
I do.
I'm sorry.
I don't have kids. No, that's okay. I don't have kids, so it's not on my TV.
Okay. So you're okay. Everybody else out there who watches Paw Patrol, I'm sorry. I worked on season 1 as a storyboard artist. It was a terrible experience, and I hated myself. I just was having no fun at all.
Right.
And I was like, I need to do something else, or I'm gonna just scream. I think I did scream. And so anyway,
okay. You're echoing the voices of probably millions of parents that have to sit.
So I quit. I was like, I can't do it. I did like 3 or 4 episode storyboards, and I quit. And the director was really mad at me. I felt really guilty, and I couldn't do it though. So I emailed IDW because I kind of built a relationship with them on my creator-owned projects, and asked them, do you have anything you think I can do? Because I'm not somebody who can draw like that kind of like realism, like I would kill me. I'm much more of a cartoony artist.
Yeah, I'd say you have a very playful style.
A very what?
I'd say you have a very playful style.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a great compliment. Thank you. I want to have fun making comics. If I'm having fun, that's going to come through. And if I'm not having fun and it's torture, it's going to come through as well. So knowing what I like and stuff, be, Sergio Aragones and Stan Sakai and Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. Drawing a bunch of transforming robots would not be good. And at the time, they didn't really have anything that I thought I'd be a good fit for. But desperation, I sent them an email. And as it happened that day, they were sitting around saying, we just got the license for Cartoon Network properties. And we were just debating on who do we hire for like launching the Powerpuff Girls. And hand shot up as fast as it could because I was a big fan of the Powerpuff Girls back in the 90s. Like when we were making Angora Napkin, me and my buddy Nick, it wasn't very long while we were developing our ideas that the Powerpuff Girls came out in 1997. And Nick was like, oh, so these guys just did everything we wanted to do, but better. And so he's kind of like, well, I'm going to go do something else then, He was satisfied, I guess. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're pretty cool. And I really did like the Powerpuff Girls a lot. I remember, again, buying the clamshell VHS and just showing anyone who would sit still, how cool the show was. And it hit the mark for everything. Like if you're a little boy, it's got action. If it's your girl, they kick butt. If you're an adult, it's got great humor. It's just a perfect package, that show.
Yeah.
So it
exploded in the amongst viewers. I remember when that was coming out, I had Cartoon Network and a friend of mine didn't. So he made me videotape episodes of Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab.
Yeah.
So that at the end of every week, I would give him a brand new VHS with, a few episodes. And then we would do that cycle every week.
You're a good friend. That's some great shows, eh? That was such a good time for Cartoon Network. So yeah, when they asked if I would be interested, I lost my mind. I was like, holy crap, yeah, I would love to work on that. And so my indie nature kicked in instantly, and I'm like, I want to write it, I want to draw it, I want to color it, I want to letter it, I want to do everything. Will you let me? And they're like, whoa, down boy. I'm not very much of a proven thing for them, but they knew my work at least, and my enthusiasm, I think, probably did a lot for me. And they said, you can write it, you can draw it, but you've never worked in monthly comics before. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And they were right. So I said, just let me try it. So I tried. I got the first issue. So they wanted a 4-issue miniseries, and I wrote a 6-issue miniseries and convinced them to go for 6 issues. And I drew it, inked it. I did as much lettering as I could by hand, just because I like hand lettering everything. And I colored the first issue. And then I realized they're right. I'm not going to be able to sustain doing everything for the next, on a monthly schedule. So they brought in a colorist who is really good and saved my butt, basically. But it was a really fun project. I loved writing the Powerpuff Girls. It was the first new Powerpuff Girls material since they'd gone off the air, and I think DC Comics had canceled. So it might have been about 10 years or so. There'd been no new Powerpuff anything. They're just completely off the map. And I had heard that they were talking about doing a reboot or reimagining or something. So my first question to them was like, we can do the old Tarkovsky style, because I saw some snippets of what they were going to look like reimagined. And they're like, oh yeah, no, we're definitely going to do the original. I'm like, oh, thank God.
You actually took quite the shift from Powerpuff Girls to your adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Now, was it a conscious choice to go something that was more family friendly to the complete other end of the spectrum?
Yeah, remember how I was saying my life is completely foolish and doesn't make any sense?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that carries over here really well. I, they approached me about pitching for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and why on earth they'd be like, get the Powerpuff Girl guy. He'll draw Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't find out until like a lot later after I had the gig is they basically exhausted everybody else in the industry before they like somebody said like, anyone have any ideas? And somebody mentioned, what about Troy Little? And they went, huh, that could work. So, I had no idea, but it was Ted Adams there at IDW. He's a massive, massive Hunter Thompson fan. And
Yeah.
his kind of thing was, I really want to publish this book, and I really won't publish this book if I can't do it right. And so he had an awful lot of people looking to adapt it. He'd sent stuff out to Grant Morrison and all these other people. And I'd seen some samples from other guys who'd put in artwork, and after the fact, I'd seen them. And he said it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. We were about to give up on the license because he's like, I'm not going to do this book a disservice and do it wrong. So unbeknownst to me, all that had happened like for a couple of years, probably it was going on. I think they had the license before it came to me. And then I'm handing in my Powerpuff Girls pages, and they're just like, oh, looks great, good job. Would you be interested in doing a pitch for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, by the way? Like right out of the blue, I'm looking at my email, reading it again and again. Like, are they really asking me to? One of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Love the book. So I was like, holy crap, I couldn't turn it down, but also I was psyching myself out entirely. How am I going to adapt that? I'm only going to ruin it. It's such a good book. How can you do it justice? So anyway, I did a pitch. And the second I sent it off, you could ask Brenda, I think I spent about an hour swearing at myself and berating myself for doing such a bad job. And I'm not going to get that gig. And how could I have blown it so bad?
Right.
And like 2 days later, they emailed me back and said that you're off Powerpuff Girls now. You're spending the next year and a half adapting Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Wow.
First thing I'm like, can I write it? Can I letter it? Can I color it? Can I, And they're like, yeah. So they let me adapt it. They let me draw it. They let me letter it. They let me color it. I did absolutely everything on that book except write it originally. Like Hunter Thompson wrote the book.
Right. Yeah.
But apart from that, I did all the other aspects to bring it to life. And they left me alone like 100%, just crazy amount of trust that I'm not going to screw this up somehow.
Yeah.
So that was amazing.
It's such a beloved text. And when it comes to like pop culture, everyone has the Terry Gilliam film in their mind. So, Johnny Depp's portrayal of Thompson is so ingrained.
I remember saying something like, I feel a bit lightheaded. Maybe you should drive.
Did you stay away from what they did in the film when you were adapting it? Did you 100%. Use any of the influence? And also, where did Ralph Steadman's art come into play when coming up with the look? Because it's so iconic in itself.
Yeah, the first time I've ever in my life gotten death threats was when they announced that there was a graphic novel being done of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Oh yeah. I mean, just internet trolls, like the usual. They don't like anything, so they're not going to like this, especially. And Hunter Thompson fans are rabid. You don't mess with their Bible. They were like, somebody break his hands and put fire ants in his eyes and stuff like this. It was funny. Anyway, I kind of knew that was going to be the case. So just talking with the editors, with the publisher, a few things we decided right off the bat was, do not attempt to do a Ralph Steadman style, because I'm not Ralph Steadman and I can't draw that way. I would look like an absolute terrible, terrible version of Ralph Steadman. So just don't. We're going from the book 100%, not the movie. So I'd seen the movie a million times, but I hadn't seen it recently. So I made a conscious effort not to watch it until the book was over, so that it wouldn't kind of just stick in my head like, oh, that's how Gilliam did it.
Yeah.
And then just take the book, read it over and over and over, and make notes on, what can be drawn, what can't be drawn, what's our page count, how bad am I blowing it, as far as overdrawing every single thing. Because the cool thing about the graphic novel, we also decided, was that every single word in the text was going to be Hunter Thompson's words. I added nothing, because I always hate it when you get an adaptation of something and they ruin it by changing the word or the meaning or the narrative, and I hate it when they do that. So I didn't want to do that with this book for sure, and like adapt it. I want to like give you basically Hunter Thompson's book slightly abridged with my pictures. And if you don't like my pictures, at least you're going to like the words, because he's a great writer. So if you like my pictures, then even better. I had to kind of accept that, I guess every artist feels like they got their limitations and their strong points. And I kind of was like, I can only do this my way, and that's not going to sit well with everybody. But what I tried to bring to it, and I think this is what got me the job, was a little bit of this kind of manic energy. So the cartooning side of me had a chance to kind of like come out in that little bit of a Mad Magazine kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think that worked for it. And then just loving the book so much myself as a fan, I found a lot of humor in it that Terry Gilliam kind of went on and leaned heavy on the dark side. And I found the book to be really, really funny. And that didn't come across in the movie as much. It's funny, but it's kind of a like uncomfortably edgy funny, like dark. It really leaned on the dark side.
It's funny in a depraved kind of way.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of like leaned into it in kind of the way that I think this is how I would do it. And not everybody's going to dig that, but hopefully enough people know that there's a sincere like love of the text, that shines through as well. And once the book came out, I was just waiting for the reviews. All these terrible people who reads reviews shouldn't do that. Yeah. And everybody who's a journalist is inspired by Hunter Thompson, right? So I knew that anyone reviewing this book is going to be like, have heavy opinions on it.
Yeah. So
almost every single review of the book that came out like had this big long preface about the guy who's doing the review of how Hunter Thompson means so much to me. He's the reason I'm a journalist. This book is the gospel. How, when I heard that this was going to be turned into a comic book, I thought this was a bad idea. Everything just shouldn't be done. It's not Ralph Steadman. Who do you think you are? Some Canadian kid who draws the Powerpuff Girls? Like, what is this? And after like a paragraph disclaimer, they're like, but it's good.
That must have felt great.
Yeah, it was the most justifying, I guess, of it all. Like, for anything, if you can win over the journalists, man, then, you did all right. You could have done worse.
All right, let's talk about Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. Now, given your affinity for animation, this must have been a fun one.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, and working with Patrick Rothfuss and Jim Zub, like, couldn't ask for a better like writing pair to do this book.
Patrick, one of the greatest fantasy novelists of our time.
Oh my God, and such a nice guy too. Just big heart. It was so great. So getting to work with him was like completely unexpected. And Jim and I met a few times in various occasions, and I don't know why he had me in mind, I guess, as like his go-to artist for this project, because we'd never worked together before. But when I guess the genesis of the whole idea came about as a joke between, like, I think it was at Emerald City Comic Con, so the story goes that the Oni and IDW tables are sitting together, just kind of like having a few drinks and laughing. What do you think about crossing over our properties? I wonder what Transformers versus, I don't know, whatever would look like. And then ha ha ha. Somebody said
versus Parks.
Yeah. Somebody said, yeah, Rick and Morty D&D. And everyone laughed and kind of though went, that's kind of a cool idea though.
Yeah.
So Jim said, I would write that in a heartbeat. You'll never make it happen. It won't happen. You got Wizards of the Coast, you got Cartoon Network, there's 2 different publishing companies, too many cooks. I'm there if you need me,
Right.
but I'm not going to sit by the phone. And eventually they called him and said, look, Patrick Rothfuss and you're going to write Rick and Morty versus D&D. And somehow I got roped into that too. Oh my God, that was so fun.
Was that intimidating at all?
No, I don't know. I just kind of roll with these weird things. It's weird stuff with my life again. Like, I don't know. I got even working on the Fear and Loathing book, just to bring it back to that for a second. I finished the project. I'd never been to LA or to Vegas, like Canada. I didn't travel that far very often. And I told the guys, we should do a proper book launch for this thing, which means you fly me down to Vegas, rent me a red convertible. I'll dress like Hunter Thompson. We'll go do Singapore slings and mezcal shots at the Polo Lounge and do a book tour, hitting all the Hunter S. Thompson spots in Vegas and stuff. And they said, okay. So I land in San Diego with a red convertible waiting for me. And yeah, we started off at basically did a private signing at IDW headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm there dressed like Hunter Thompson. And they said, do you mind if Kevin Eastman does a signing with you here and just sets up next to you? I'm like, yeah, I kind of grew up in Ninja Turtles Mirage Studios and absolutely love Kevin's work. So they're going to plop Kevin next to me. Am I okay with that? Yeah. It's just like, wow, how weird is that? I did not expect that to happen. Years later, I'm working with Kevin Eastman. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is that how the collaboration started? And what was it? Is it Ragdoll?
The radically rearranged run in Ragdolls with Kevin Eastman. So yeah, that's kind of where the genesis of that was. Like a few years earlier, they set me up to sign with Kevin, and he saw the Fear and Loathing book, and I guess he kind of dug my style, and then just called me out of the blue years later. Another random weird experience I'm having now. So sorry that derailed your thing, but I guess just saying intimidating. I don't know. The people I've met in comics have been so cool, so chill, so awesome, so down to earth that they're not intimidating. They're just people who kind of like love the same thing you love, which is cool comics and cool art. And I guess there's always exceptions, but my experience, I've had such a good time. Anytime I go to a convention, I get to meet new writers and artists. Right. It's awesome. Yeah. I'm as much a fan of it all as I am a creator. So I get all excited. So no, it wasn't intimidating. It was just fun. I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. Jim knows D&D like inside and out. Yeah. We're going to totally nail this.
Yeah. And it shows in the book for sure.
Oh my God. He had stuff in there for anyone. If you're a D&D fan, there's like so many deep cuts and subtleties and stuff. It's so much fun. And if you're a Rick and Morty fan, oh man, how perfect is that to just plunk them in a multiverse? Like, of course this would happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my first introduction to your work was through that book. I remember being in a cool shop, and I saw it was actually here in Vancouver, Big Piece.
Yeah.
Had the inked cover to the first issue framed and up on his wall, and I was like, what is that? And I don't think the book had come out yet. And he's like, that's Troy Little's cover for Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, he's a Canadian artist and he lives in Prince Edward Island. I'm like, oh, that's where my girlfriend is from. And that's how I got introduced to your work. I picked up the issue, and then I guess you remember, I came over to your house.
Yeah, you did indeed. Yes, you.
Now, speaking of being Canadian, Canada sometimes gets a bad rap for their art outside of music. There's often this feeling that outside of Quebec, we kind of lack a sort of national artistic identity. Do you think there's a unifying link between Canadian art and why our comics as a medium, is where Canadians have found success?
The comics that come out of Canada that seem to be really cool to me tend to be on the indie side of things. Like you get the Jeff Lemire started thing, and Faith Hicks has done amazing with her stuff. It's very personal kind of comics, and I don't know that really has a appeal to me as opposed to I don't know, superhero comics and stuff like that. I can't say I'm a big fan of any since the 90s. They kind of killed me.
Right.
But the idea of like superheroes in Canada always seemed goofy to me. I don't know. You need a big city, a big metropolis kind of thing, and
Well, you don't think we can do a sprawling superhero epic in like Winnipeg?
Yeah, I know exactly, right? Like, yeah, okay. Everyone's cold and nobody's really going to want to run around in tights, and I don't know. It just has a bit of a goofy feel to it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think finding like your voice in comics in a different way than like kind of outside of the American flag waving kind of thing, like it's very, very superhero dominated. And I think Canadian comics, while they can do that, Captain Canuck isn't kind of like ever going to be Superman, just doesn't have the right feel to it. So go someplace else, do a different type of storytelling. You know.
Well, maybe Captain Canuck can get that kind of status if we get someone like Jim Lee on it.
Maybe, maybe. There was an Alpha flight that took place in PEI thanks to Jed McKay. So.
Oh right, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, he was wearing a PEI dirt shirt too, which I totally like. That. That's really knowing your local lore there. That one. Yeah,
for sure. Now I sent you a picture that I dug up from your Twitter. I don't know if you got it.
Yeah.
And now I wanted, probably it might remind you of something that you forgot about. What can you tell us about this photo and your frequently used hashtag Don't Talk About Wine Club?
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Okay, that's
hashtag
it.
Don't talk about Wine Club, right?
Troy, I have one last question to ask you, and for some people, this one might actually be a sore point. But I've heard that your opinion is that Alien 3 is a great film. Please explain yourself.
How do you feel about Alien 3? Are we going to get into this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you how I feel about it.
I want to know. I'm ready to debate you on this one. Unless you love it, and then in which case we're in a line.
Okay, so for me, it's it's obviously a flawed film because David Fincher didn't get the opportunity to make the movie that he wanted to make. But right from the very beginning, Alien 3 slaps fans right in the face by killing off.
So good.
Oh, come on. Okay. The second Alien, Aliens was such an amazing movie about survival, and you're so invested in those characters' survival, only to have them die off screen at the very beginning of the third movie was such a punch to the gut.
Oh, I loved it. And I mean,
so
this is coming from,
it got off on the wrong foot.
I am a huge Aliens fan. I was like, man, I got Alien toys all over the place here. Like, I love the stuff. Like,
yeah.
Everywhere. Anyway, I won't grab everything, but love Aliens. So when Alien 3 was coming out, I was like so excited. And we went.
I still can't forgive them for pulling off Hicks and Newt.
Oh, what an opening, man. That was so good. First off, David Fincher is an amazing director. He's like one of the best visual directors, period. He's so good.
Yeah.
So having just seen like the look of that film, the way it opened with these great beats and these great cuts, I'm like, oh man, what's going on here?
Now, are you talking, okay, so first of all, let's clarify real quick. Are you talking about the original theatrical version that the studio put out, or are you talking about the reconstructed, quote unquote Fincher cut that came out later on like DVD and Blu-ray?
Yeah, I didn't say that until recently, honestly, like a couple of years ago. So the theater version that they cut. The look of the movie was just so good, like this gritty yellow black, gross. It felt like it was full of flies. You could almost smell the film.
Boss!
And yeah, I mean, it takes away some of your favorite characters right off the bat and leaves it with Ripley. But I think I was just so on board with like, what do you, I mean, Aliens is like they're three different movies instead of just kind of being a carbon copy of what happened before, like all the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
It did something different.
Yeah. I'll give them that.
I loved the dog alien. I thought it looked so cool. Like that whole concept of like, oh, whatever this thing ingests in kind of takes on part of its DNA, which became part of the whole alien lore, you know, the AVP stuff and that. Yeah. I don't know. I just really, really liked that movie when it came out. And everyone I know was like supremely disappointed and angry because Hicks is dead, Newt is dead. What was the point of Aliens if you just kill off the characters? So like, I can appreciate where you're coming from with that. But at the end of the day, that's what they did. So much like Rise of Skywalker, it's kind of like, I don't like what you did, but I'm stuck with it because you did it. So
I don't think I would be as mad if they had just incorporated their deaths like more in more detail in the film. You know, like if the first act they were still alive at least.
It made it so hard when she had to go and like check Newt for alien infestation. Like that was just like so horrible because of that. It made for a great sequence.
I guess. We'll agree to disagree.
I've been defending that movie forever, but you know, like anything, it's personal preference and it's subjective art. So I take nothing personally. You don't like it, you don't like it.
Have you ever wanted to draw an alien comic?
I think that gets a little bit into that. I had an opportunity one time to draw a Star Wars comic, and it was right in the middle of Rick and Morty D&D, and I'm like, I really want to do this because I love Star Wars so much. And this is an opportunity to do like a little 15-page Star Wars Adventures comic for IDW. And I had the script and everything, and I just realized I couldn't fit it in the schedule. I would take too long trying to draw it or trying to figure out how to draw it in a way. I don't know how some people do it where they can just kind of like hit a comic and do it. And like if you look at like Rick and Morty stuff, it looks like the show, right? In that I have a pretty good habit, I think, just with my animation background of making things look like what they're supposed to look like, in that way of when you're doing animation, you have to kind of ape everyone else's style so that there's no real hiccups in what you're seeing, you know? It's not a place that's really good for personal expression. Comics is really good as a place for personal expression, but I had a hard time adapting to that mindset. I keep wanting to go in and give people like, you're here for Rick and Morty, and I want to give you basically an episode in comic book form. Unfortunately, I get frustrated with myself for the fact that pages end up looking like the show. So you kind of lose the artist in some way, but feel like you're just being
Gotcha.
Just because you can imitate the style and it looks like the style, you lose your personal expression. It's not like James Kochaka does SpongeBob comics. They look like James Kochaka doing SpongeBob comics, you know? And if I did SpongeBob comics, it would look like SpongeBob SquarePants by, I don't know, somebody who did the TV show or something, you know? So I'm trying to get a bit more comfortable with the idea of putting my own personal spin on things. Not being so beholden to like the style. So I know doing Star Wars, I just kind of like it's gonna take me too long to figure out how to draw the characters, to draw them in a way that I'm comfortable drawing them. And I'm completely mired in Rick and Morty, so there's no time for this to figure it out. And I just decided I better not do it. Alien comic, and it's going over to Marvel now, I guess. That'd be. I would like drawing the alien, but I wouldn't like drawing all the people. So being the aliens are kind of like only supposed to be in it a little bit, you know, to keep them kind of both spooky and mysterious. I'd just be drawing a bunch of people.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to see an alien story that was completely wordless
Hmm.
and that only featured the aliens. I think that
Yeah.
would be I think it would be difficult to do, because like every time they come up with a new movie or whatever, you got to have humans involved, which is fine. I get it. But just once, whether it's in a film, a cartoon, a comic book, I'd love to just see something that's purely in the world of the alien characters themselves.
I think if it hasn't been done, I think it would be cool. I haven't read every Alien comic, that's for sure.
I haven't either, and I'm gonna say I think that it hasn't been done. I'm not sure.
Don't know for sure, but man, that would be cool. I like aliens a lot, but yeah, you kind of want to cut to the chase sometimes because you're all about the aliens. So the longer you're spending on the people and the humans, you're like, when did the monsters show up? I don't want to hear another story about colonial marines or people who like stumble across a face hugger. What's this? We know what this is. Like
now, Troy, as we reach the end of our show, now's the time to reveal this awesome piece of art that you've been working on.
All right, not quite done, but I'll show you what I got. I got most of it done here. Again, I've never drawn this character before, and I thought this would be a lot of fun. Big fan of the Maxx, big fan of Sam Keith's work. His stuff's just huge inspiration to me. So, all right, let's see if we can get this. You ready?
Yeah. What?
Can you see that?
Oh. Yeah.
That. So we got the Maxx there, all veiny and Sam Keithish, right? And we got some of the down the bottom. I'm just filling in now.
Wow, what a spectacular piece.
Thank you.
Now, if you want to own this magnificent piece of art, please check out the auction link below in the description. All the proceeds are going to benefit the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Troy, thank you so much for being cornered with us today.
Hey, this is awesome. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching Drawn and Cornered. Remember to bid. Make sure to subscribe. Click the little bell icon to get notified for future episodes. Believe me, you do not want to miss who's coming up next. Thank you so much.